go. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us here on the Father Show today. And I'm really glad that you have. I think today you're going to love it, women and men, because we're going to be talking about a subject that I have never talked about. And I'm really curious how it's going to turn out. But don't go anywhere because we're going to have a fantastic show today. But before we get started, if you have not subscribed to the show, I would ask that you would click on that subscription button and hit that notification bell while you're at it. So that way, anytime we have a show, you'll be notified and you won't miss a one. But I also, any men, if you are looking for resources that can help you be the best man that you can be, I want you to go to the Father Show with mythompson.com. Click on resources, and there you will find resources that can help you be the best man that you can be. And if you can't find what you're looking for, please give me a shout out at the Father Show at gmail.com, and we will try to find that information for you. Now, to get into the show. Today, we have Dr. Avrum Weiss, and he is a psychologist, author, and a speaker who has been working to better understand and help men for over 4 decades. He has written 4 books and is a columnist for psychologytoday.com, where his columns has almost 1 million views. I mean, this man is on top of it, and I am very happy and blessed to have him on the show today. Well, so we're going to be talking about, I'm going to let him tell you because it's going to be fantastic and you really want to pay attention because we want to find out some very good information tonight. And I think you're going to be blessed. Men and women will love this show today. So, without further ado, let's get this thing started. I want to introduce Dr. Avrum Weiss, and he's coming on the show, and we're going to be talking about why men have a fear of women. And I know it's a little bit more than that. So, Avrum, why don't you tell the audience exactly what we're going to be talking about?
Thank you, Mike. I really appreciate it.
No problem.
It's a kind of a counterintuitive idea. Mostly when you say to people that men are afraid of women, they kind of look strange at you. Like, why would men have any reason to be afraid of women? But when you have men alone and you speak with men without women around, the first reaction you get is they kind of bow up in a kind of like, I'm not afraid of a woman way. But within a minute or so, the idea really penetrates and you can see them considering that so much of what goes on for them in their relationships actually does have to do with being afraid of women. And I'll tell you how I came to learn about that. I have spend a lot of time with men. I'm a psychotherapist. I see a lot of men. And again and again and again, men would talk with me about things in their relationships that they were unhappy about. And I would almost always ask them, well, have you talked to your girlfriend or your wife or your partner about this? And they would look horrified, like, I can't talk to her about this. That would be terrible. Things would be awful. She'd be much more upset with me. And it gradually started to occur to me that they weren't talking about themselves with their partners because they were afraid to talk about themselves, because they were afraid that she would be disappointed or she'd disapprove, or maybe she'd withdraw and not love him, for a whole series of reasons that actually a lot of what goes on inside of men's lives, they hide from their partners. They're afraid to talk about.
Hey, And I struggle with this title when you brought it to me, and I was like, men afraid of women. I know we have some fear, especially when you like you talked about in protector, because men is supposed to be the protector, the financial
Right.
provider, and then you have that sexual issue of it. And I'm not going to jump into it because I know you have more information on that, but it's just the idea to say to a man that you're afraid of a woman and having him to understand why he may be afraid of the woman is really, I think it's going to take a lot of men back for them to understand. So I really want you to,
I
you
agree.
know, tell.
Yeah. Well, let me suggest that there are 7 ways in which men are afraid of women.
Mm-hmm.
The first is men are afraid of being dominated and controlled by women.
Okay.
And I hope this will not be censored out, but it is in
No.
common uses. The expression "pussy whipped"
Mm-hmm.
is a fascinating expression if you think about it. Why is it that the worst thing one man can say to another man is that he's controlled by a woman? How do women get in that? And interestingly, not only controlled by a woman, but if you sort of break it down, controlled by their need of a woman. So
Mm-hmm.
it's insulting for one man to say to another man that you need a woman.
Now, let me ask you, is that, when you hear about single parents and a lot of women raising, their boys, do you think that's a reason why uh, men feel that way?
I think it's a really good question. It's a part of it because what's happening is women used to marry because they couldn't make their way financially in the world without men. Women did better financially when they were married, but that's not true anymore. So now when women marry, they're basically in the same financial boat they were when they were single. It's not like they're going to get to stay home and take care of the kids. In most families, they're going to have to go out and work and do the majority of the child care. So
Mm-hmm.
what's happening is women are less and less interested in marriage. So that sort of segues nicely to what I think is the second fear that men have, which is the fear of being entrapped by women. And this
Mm-hmm.
is all the stuff that men have. So we have this picture of marriage as if marriage were something that women try to trap men into, as
Mm-hmm.
if marriage was something that served women better than it served men. But in fact, if you look at the research, married men are healthier, wealthier, and happier than single men.
Right.
But single women are better off than married women. So we have this myth that is very distorted that women are trying to trap men into marriage, but in fact, marriage works much better for men than it does for women.
But what the when you're look at little girls, they practice being married all
That's
their
right.
lives. So
Yep.
would that be the reason why they look at going into marriage, even
Absolutely.
though it's not necessarily going to benefit them health wise?
But it's changing. If you look at women in their 20s and ask them, teenager and early 20s, do you plan to get married? A high percentage say yes, but then fewer women are actually getting married.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So the third fear is the one you mentioned, which is men fear failing at what they are taught as their role to protect and provide for women.
Mm-hmm.
So men are taught to feel responsible for their wives and children's well-being. But the dilemma for men then is anytime their wife is unhappy about anything, to a man that means he's failed.
Yeah.
So if the wife says it's drafty in here, that's his fault. That's something he hasn't taken care of. Even if it
But
has nothing to do with him, he always feels on the hook.
but doesn't women want to feel that protection from the man?
This is, of course, you hit the nail right on the head. This is what's so confusing for men today. So, yes, women absolutely do. But at the same time, women are saying to men, I want to be an equal partner with you.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be a
Okay.
partner in financially. I want to be a partner in raising the children. But but it's a very mixed message, and I feel particularly for young men today, who get this mixed message from women and really don't know what's okay, what's not okay, what does she want, how am I supposed to be with her. I think particularly for young guys in their 20s, it's a particularly confusing time.
Okay. Because I know that women have that piece where they want to be they want
Mm-hmm.
to be protected, and the man has that stigma in his head that he has to be
Right.
the provider.
Yep.
But society has switched and changed
Yep.
in a lot of ways where women are more financially ahead of men. And if you
Yep.
look at college, more women go to college than you do men.
65%. Yep. Women are becoming more the majority in most professional fields, most graduate programs, medical schools,
Hmm.
law schools, even business schools, which
Hmm.
are traditionally men attend. More and more women are attending business schools.
Would that be another reason why men are afraid of women?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Men have always been able to count on, even if you weren't a great husband, if you're a great provider, you could probably skate with that,
Yeah.
right? But that doesn't really count for much now, because women are now saying, no, I want you to be a partner. I want you to be an emotional partner, not just a provider. I want you to be a romantic partner for me, an
Hmm.
emotional partner.
Hmm.
So the traditional roles are not going to be sufficient anymore.
So, in a nutshell, in a way, we have to throw out that traditional role, what we were brought up in, and our fathers and grandfathers, the ideology that they had about masculinity. We need to throw that out.
I think we're trying, but it's, as you pointed out, it's much more complicated than that. So if you go to the grocery store and you look at the books by the checkout counter that are there for women,
Hmm.
um, the romantic novels that are there for women, open one sometime, and what will you find? The genre is known as bodice rippers,
Okay.
because those books are filled of politically incorrect relationships between men and women, of men being bodice ripping, tearing
Hmm.
women's clothes off, taking them forcefully. Well, that'll get you thrown in jail.
Hmm.
But those are the books that, so it's so confusing, because that is a piece of women's erotic lives, but it sure is not something that we accept as behavior from men anymore. So how do couples work that out? It's very
Wow.
confusing.
That's a very good point, because you look at those romantic novels and the man is kind of aggressive, and
That's
he
right.
comes in and tear her clothes and throw her down on the bed. And
Yep.
but if we do that in reality, we're gonna end up in behind bars.
Right, exactly. Somebody did a study. It was an article in the New York Times about, they interviewed, I think the young men were in their late, I think they were high school age kids,
Hmm.
and they said, where did you learn about sex, and what did you learn? And what they all said, they were so confused. What they said is, most of what I learned from watching porn. So
Hmm.
I watch porn, and the guys in porn are forceful and dominant and aggressive, and they take the women and they throw them on the bed and they almost force themselves on her, and the women seem to be loving it. But then I go out on a date with Mary, and she is saying she wants me to be gentle and kind and vulnerable. So what am I, you know what am I supposed to do?
Right.
Will Jane be attracted to me if I am the open, vulnerable, warm person that she says she wants?
Mm.
Or will I just be her, as they call it today, the friend zone?
Oh, you don't want to be in the
Right.
friend zone.
Not if you're attracted to Mary. Yeah.
No. Yeah. And you
But,
mentioned that. No, go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, the next fear I think would fit right here, because it's one that I think most men would recognize, which is that men are afraid of women's emotions.
Hmm.
Any emotion, anytime. And the obvious reason that men are afraid of women's emotion is that we're not very connected with our own emotions. And what we learn is that feelings are as contagious as a yawn. You ever tried to not yawn when somebody else is yawning? Right? So when a woman has strong feelings, what happens for men is men get more emotional. They get stirred up. And we have all this training and teaching that says men don't get emotional. So when women get emotional, we either withdraw, detach, or if we're really feeling threatened, we try to shut them down. Stop being so emotional. Be rational. Be like me. And we try to get the conversation back on terms that we're more comfortable with.
I can't argue the fact, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Two more. One is, three more, sorry. One is that, so we're going deeper and deeper with each of these. So each of these fears is more unconscious and deeper than the one before. So we get now to the ones that are sort of the underlying one. And one is that men have a real fear of being inadequate, of being exposed as being inadequate.
Yeah.
Again, it goes back to feeling responsible for taking care of other people. And really, a lot of men deep down have a belief that they as a person are not really worthwhile, that their value as a person is only in the service that they do. And so if the service is not enough, if I clean the house and wash the car and cut the grass and all that, and you're still unhappy with me, then I don't have anything inherently to offer. If my service is not of value, then I have no inherent value beyond that.
And you know, women have, they know that if they really want to cut a man down, this is that point right there, exactly it. If you
Yeah,
want to cut a man down, when you start talking about being inadequate in any way, shape, or form, that will really
that's
make a
exactly.
man feel worthless, make
Yeah,
him angry, and his emotions are definitely going to change.
yeah. So I'll tell you a great example of this is sexually.
Yeah.
So men have a reputation of being self-centered, selfish lovers, but it's really not true. When you survey men, what's most important to you in your sexual relationship with your partner? Pleasing their partner is the number one thing that men say,
Mm-hmm.
the, which sounds good, but the problem is it's not pleasing her because I'm a nice person and I want to do something nice for you. It's pleasing her to validate me.
Mm-hmm.
If you're pleased, then I'm okay and you won't leave me.
And I can
And
stick
this
my
is the
check all.
session.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, I was just gonna
I
say
was
I can
just,
stick my chest out
that's
and
right.
I can brag to my
That's
friends
right.
and my buddies that I rocked her world.
That's right. And what's missing for many men, in fact, the next book is going to be about men's inability to experience their own pleasure or
Mm.
fun or play because we're so worried and so scared. So many men talk about not really experiencing a lot of pleasure sexually. They're so worried about performance and pleasing their partner that they don't really pay a lot of attention to their own pleasure.
Yeah. And even the time frame that men are having their sex, they feel if they don't last long enough, they're
Right.
inadequate.
Yes, exactly. Because she's got to be pleased, or I'm. Which is the last fear that I wanted to talk about, which is the bottom line fear for most men is the
Hmm.
fear of being abandoned. That since I don't really have much inherent value as a person, if I don't please you, you'll leave me.
Yeah, you're gonna leave me for somebody else that's going to do what you
Yeah,
want, in a sense.
yeah, yeah,
Well, yep, that is true.
yeah.
You know, so how can us as men really get over this fear?
Let's talk a little bit about how it happens first,
Okay,
about how men become afraid of women. And if you've got that video queued up, this would be a good time to play that.
okay, I will play
It's
it
just a
right
couple
now.
for the viewers. It's a couple minutes long.
Okay, here we go.
Babies this young are extremely responsive to the emotions and the reactivity and the social interaction that they get from the world around them. This is something that we started studying 30, 40 years ago, when people didn't think that infants could engage in social interaction. In the still face experiment, what the mother did was she sits down and she's playing with her baby, who's about a year of age.
I'm my good girl. Oh.
And she gives a greeting to the baby gives a greeting back to her.
Yeah.
This baby starts pointing at different places in the world, and the mother's trying to engage her and play with her. They're working to coordinate their emotions and their intentions, what they want to do in the world. And that's really what the baby is used to. And then we ask the mother to not respond to the baby. The baby very quickly picks up on this. And then she uses all of her abilities to try and get the mother back. She smiles at the mother. She points because she's used to the mother looking where she points. The baby puts both hands up in front of her and says, "What's happening here?" She makes that screechy sound at the mother, like, "Come on, why aren't we doing this?" Even in this 2 minutes, when they don't get the normal reaction, they react with negative emotions, they turn away, they feel the stress of it. They actually may lose control of their posture because of the stress that they're experiencing.
Okay. I'm here. And what are you doing? Oh, yes. Oh, what a big girl.
It's a little like the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good is that normal stuff that goes on, that we all do with our kids. The bad is when something bad happens, but the infant can overcome it. After all, when you stop the still face, the mother and the baby start to play again. The ugly is when you don't give the child any chance to get back to the good. There's no reparation, and they're stuck in that really ugly situation.
So let me ask you, Mike, for your reaction. What was your personal reaction watching that video?
My personal reaction is I definitely see that in babies. You know, I did a show just recently and I was talking about how babies can feel the negativity in a room, how they can feel your vibration and it affects them accordingly. So as parents, you know, we have to be very conscious and be very careful to understand that just because you don't think that your child can hear you arguing, they can feel that negativity in the room and they can
Right.
feel that vibe. And that sticks with them, especially, you know, we know that kids really learn from age 1 to 3 or 1 to 5. They're really absorbing everything. And that's going to dictate how their
Uh-huh.
life comes out and how they deal with relationships going forward.
Did watching the video upset you at all?
It didn't upset me. It just confirmated what I know
Yeah.
now. You know, I want other fathers to understand that because
Right.
I want them to know that when they think that I can be distanced, and we just did a show about postpartum depression, and when you are stay away from your child and not engaging with your child, they can feel that.
Yep.
And so you have to be involved and you have to be engaged with your kids, and that's what we want you to do. And you can't think that these kids are dumb, because one thing I tell parents, kids are not dumb. They are so a whole lot smarter than you think
They're
they
watching
are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that video, I still find upsetting. And what I want your viewers to notice is the mother wasn't hostile or angry or
Hmm.
critical. She was just non-responsive, and that was enough to have the infant screeching and crying within a minute.
Yeah.
And I would say to you, Mike, that inside a grown-up man, when his wife stops responding to him, he inside of him looks exactly like that baby. You can't see it on the outside because he's being all tough and brave, but inside a grown man, it looks just like that baby. And here's an interesting piece of information. In those studies, the male babies were more physiologically upset than the female babies, and they stayed upset longer. And guess what? In adult heterosexual couples, when they're arguing with each other, the men get more upset and stay upset longer.
I would have to agree. I know for myself, if I, just taking myself for example, I know if you make me upset, I'm not going to get over it that
Right.
quickly.
Right.
It's going to linger. And I tell my wife, I said, sometime I'm going to shut up because before I say something that I don't want to say or shouldn't say, I'm going to wait and cool off.
So we pay as much attention to our wives as that infant paid to his mother. And we are that vulnerable to her disapproval or even just non-responsiveness as that baby was to his mother. And because we're taught to not need anyone, we're in a terrible conflict because we do need our partners.
Yeah.
We do need our wives, but we're told we shouldn't. So we have all these feelings, but no place to put them and no way to express them.
And I tell people all the time, and I really believe that we all need someone. We all want love. We all want to feel love. And so for any time, I hear people that say, oh, I don't need anybody. I'm good on my own. You trying to convince yourself that, in my opinion.
Right. I would
but
say I hope that's not true.
no, I don't think it's
I
true.
hope you're not that lonely and that cut off that that's true.
Right. Now, I can sit there and say for myself, now my mother raised me to be independent on my own. So I can cook, I can clean, I can wash, I can do all that. And I remember one day telling my grandmother, she said, oh, when are you going to bring me some grandbabies? I said, dear, I only need a woman for one thing. And I couldn't believe I said that to my grandmother when I said
A woman.
Right. Yeah. And I'm like, oops. But I don't need, but I enjoy having that companionship. And I guess in a sense, I, really being tell the truth, I do need that. Yeah.
I know you do. So
I know you're going to say that.
I'll tell you how we can prove it. When men and women divorce, who remarries sooner?
The woman. Yeah.
No. Men.
Oh, you saying when men and women get divorced,
When men
who
and women
marries
divorce
first? Yeah.
Yeah. Men remarry much sooner than women.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, and part of that, I think
me
too is, going back to talking about previous generations, you had a divide in what a man's role and what a woman's role was. Back in the day, with people that are, say, 80 today and older, they depended on the woman to cook and clean and take care of the kids because they didn't know how to do that.
Absolutely.
A woman depended on, as they say, the man to bring home the bacon because not that they didn't know how to do it, but society wouldn't let you do it.
That's right.
And then we started intertwining where it's changed. And now you even have men staying at home taking care of the babies. And the woman is going out. Why? Because she can make more than he can.
Yep. Because she may have a college degree and he doesn't.
Right. And she's a professional and he isn't. And when you try to balance it out, you say, okay, well, baby, instead of paying child care, I make this, you stay home and we'll save that money instead of you going out to work and we spending it. Yeah.
So let me tell you how this, in very concrete terms that everyone will recognize, let me tell you how this plays out in a very typical argument between a married couple.
Okay.
So let's imagine a couple, Bob and Mary, and Mary's upset with Bob because she doesn't think he does enough around the house or helps out enough with the kids. And for Bob's perspective, he feels like he does lots around the house. He goes to work all day long. He comes home. He helps out. He makes dinner. He does this, that, and the other. From Bob's perspective, he sees Mary as needy, too needy, and controlling. And Mary sees him as pretty self-centered and putting himself first. From Bob's perspective, it seems like no matter what he does, Mary's never pleased with him. And they get into a cycle where the more Mary pursues Bob, the more Bob withdraws. The more Bob withdraws, the more Mary pursues Bob. It's a classic pattern. Sound familiar?
Mm-hmm.
What's really going on there? Well, Bob learned from his father that the way to express his love for a woman is through taking care of her, through acts of service. And so that's the way he expresses his love for Mary. The problem is that Mary wants more than that. She's happy to have him take care of things around the house and work and all that. But really what Mary wants is more connection and a sense of partnership from Bob. The problem is, because Bob is afraid of being inadequate, that almost any way that Mary approaches him to try to talk about wanting more from him, he's going to hear it as criticism. Criticism is the number one word I hear from men in talking about their marriages all the time, is that they feel criticized. So from Mary's perspective, she feels like she's trying to make more of a connection from him, and she doesn't understand why every time she tries to talk to him that he gets defensive and feels criticized. So Mary, since Mary has no clue that Bob's afraid, she thinks he's just being a jerk. She thinks that he's being defensive and that he's manipulating her and in a power struggle. But what she doesn't understand is that what Bob's trying to control are his own fears. He's afraid of disappointing Mary and her judging him as being inadequate. He's afraid of Mary's emotions and that he's going to get his own feelings stirred up. And he's afraid, in the bottom line, he's afraid that Mary's going to leave him because he's not up to snuff and not taking care of her.
Mm. Okay. Now, with that, is there a way for men to start being less afraid? And,
Absolutely.
and I know communication is huge in any
Yeah.
relationship, but how can we as men really come to grasp with this fear that we may have?
So one very simple thing to do is to go on Facebook and in the search bar type men's fears of women. And it will take you to a group, which is a Facebook group where men can go and talk about these issues with other men.
Really?
So that's a
Okay.
simple thing that any man can do. And anybody's welcome there. If you have questions, I'll respond to questions there. But also, if you want to talk about what's going on with you and your marriage, you can post it there and other men will respond to that.
Wow, that's great.
The main work for men's primary defense when they feel scared is withdrawal.
Hmm.
And so for men, need to figure out a way to not go there, to not make withdrawal their go-to response, but to learn how to lean in when they're afraid rather than pull back. And the best ways I know to do that actually are things like your show. The more men have close friendships with other men to support them, the more likely they are to be able to have the courage to risk more and be more open and vulnerable. So I would say that a lot of it has to do with starting with developing relationships. The other thing is in the book that I just published, there's an entire chapter for men about how to set up a support group with other men to talk about these issues. And it's sort of a step-by-step for men who want to get together with other men and talk.
And when I was researching a little bit and I heard you talk about men should, get into a support group. And at first, my initial thought was, men ain't gonna do no support group. We don't want to do that. But then I got to thinking about it, and I said, well, wait a minute. You know, when I was really involved in church, we used to have men fellowship,
That's right. Same thing,
and
different name.
right, because we would
Yeah,
sit down and we would talk about different
right.
things, different issues that men have, and maybe in a biblical way or biblical solution, but it was still the same thing. You know,
Absolutely.
yeah.
I run a number of men's therapy groups, and I remember the night before the first time I did my first men's groups. Usually I'd done mixed groups, men and women together, and I thought, this is the stupidest idea I've ever had. This is going to be awful. They're going to talk about sports. It's going to be superficial. Nobody's going to go into any depth. I will tell you that the groups I do for men are the most open and vulnerable groups I do. They are the only groups I do in which people talk openly about loving each other. People hug each other at the end of the groups. And what I learned is men are dying to talk. It's just they're scared to do it when women are around. But if you get men alone in a room, they will open up and talk with each other. And it's an incredibly healing experience for them to talk in a real way with other men.
Because I think part of the reason I think that's the case is, you know, we as men, you know, we know the women have a view, an idea, opinion of what a man is, and if you don't fit into that, you know, once again, you can feel like she's gonna leave you because
Yep.
you're not the kind of man that she wants. But when you can get with the fellas and you can sit down and say, hey, you know, this is what I'm going through. How can you help me? And really, that's how the Father Show Resource Program got started. Because
Yep.
I had a lot of men come to me and say, you know what, I'm going through divorce and I need some help with something and I don't know where to find it. So
Yep.
we started the organization. So, and I even spoke at men's groups. Especially, I remember one was men that just got out of prison, and they asked me to come in and speak, and it was really enlightening to see and hear these men talk about their experiences and what they were feeling and how they're dealing with these situations now that they're out of prison, and to watch them and to hear them. So you're absolutely correct. Men want to talk, but they gotta talk when they're comfortable and they're not going to be judged and ridiculed at the
That's
same
right.
time.
And the book has a chapter that's a very sort of clear cut guidelines for men who feel like, I don't know how to start a group. Well, yeah, you do. Just invite a group of men together. And what I suggest is read the book together as a starting place. And
Hmm.
then there are some very specific guidelines. You and I were talking before the show, and I mentioned to you, I just wrote a post on psychologytoday.com about men and loneliness that has had almost 1 million views in 2 weeks. So clearly, this is an issue. You know, clearly it resonated with people. I mean, it's an astounding number of people, and I've gotten so many emails from men saying, I just got divorced, or I lost my wife, or I
Hmm.
don't have any friends, or it's a huge issue.
And you know, I was when you said that, and I'm writing it down right now because I will love to have you back on the show and talk about that in more detail.
Mike,
Because
I'd happy to talk to you anytime.
okay, well, good. We're gonna book that and get it locked in.
Right?
Because men, we can feel lonely, and we don't want to feel lonely, and it's and I know for health wise, when men feel lonely, we don't live as long
That's
as
exactly.
as
Yep.
you know, as a woman or a married man for that.
Social isolation is a bigger risk factor for early mortality than smoking cigarettes.
Yeah.
Loneliness is more damaging to your health. If you had to choose between being alone and having no friends or smoking cigarettes, you would live longer if you had friends and smoked cigarettes.
Well, because you
You
know,
know,
mentally, you're going to withdraw and you're going to go into depression,
Yeah.
And,
Well, it goes
that's
back to
just,
what you said before. We may think we don't need anybody, but you don't even live as long. I mean, you
no.
die, in addition to depression and anxiety and all that, you literally die sooner. So
Well,
clearly we need each other.
yeah. And when you look at the statistics, you look at men that retire and they sit at home and do nothing. They think, oh, this is great.
Right.
Now I get to stay home and do nothing. They
Right.
die quicker.
Right. Because the women are off playing bridge, playing tennis. They're with their friends, going to lunch, and the men are sitting there by themselves, with
Yeah.
they got nothing going on.
Yeah. Well, that's terrible. And we as men have to get away from this stigma of what, what our role is and how to modify it, because it's nothing wrong with having that role where you got to be the provider and you got to be the protector and all that.
Right. But
There's
not
nothing wrong
just,
with that. Yeah.
no.
But you
Right.
got to modify it and adjust to today's time. And,
Yeah.
and that's
There's so
evolution
much
in a
more.
nutshell.
Yeah. There's so much more available to us.
Yeah.
There's so much fuller lives that we can live now than we used to. There used to be a joke. So I've been a dad for 34 years. And I remember when I first had my son, my firstborn, there was a joke that was very popular. What do you call a dad in a park on a Saturday with his kids?
Okay.
Divorced. Because you never saw a man alone with his kids in a park on a Saturday unless he was divorced.
Unless he was divorced.
That was 35 years ago. And now that's changed dramatically. And I
Yeah.
would say that fathers becoming actively involved as full parents is perhaps the one of the most important social changes that has happened during my lifetime.
Yeah. And it's great to watch. I see a lot of fathers that are just so involved with their kids. Our oldest son is that way. He is so involved with his boys, and he's always out trying to find something for them to do and to be a part of their life. And I admire him and really appreciate what he's doing for my grandboys. But it does show how things have changed. And even my brother-in-law, who is much younger than I am, I see how involved he is with his kids, and you see that parenting done changed quite a bit compared to,
Dramatically.
yeah,
Yep.
when
I've
our
been in
fathers
groups
were
of
growing
young
up.
people. I've been with groups of young people who were parents, and there'd be 15 or 20 parents and a bunch of kids running all around. And the most amazing thing, whenever a kid would start crying,
Hmm.
it's the dads who got up to take care of the kids.
Yeah, and I know when my daughter was born, when she would cry, I would be over her mom to get to her
Yeah.
before the mother could. And I
Yep.
don't know if that came from, like, my dad was maybe a little different. He was in the military, but when he was home, which wasn't very often,
Right.
he would spend his nights and his time with me and my sister. And those are some of the best memories I have of my
Yeah.
father. And, I tell people,
So,
unfortunately,
yeah.
he died when I was 13, but I
But you
remember
got that
us.
from him, and you're giving it to your kids.
I'm giving it to my
Gave it
kids.
to
I know where I get it from because he fed it to me. And I mean, we would sit
That's
there
right.
and watch cartoons or movies all night and get up Saturday morning and wake up because we would land right there and watch cartoons and
But there you
together.
go, Mike. There's the perfect example. One man, your father, who you only had for 13 years and was gone a lot of the time,
Hmm.
but still, the time he was there, he made an impact on you that is now affecting how many
Yeah.
men? Listen, hundreds and thousands of men
Yeah.
from the one thing that your father did. So people say, you can't change the world, but your father helped change the world just by being a dad to you.
Yeah. And
That's a great story.
I want a whole lot of men to hear what you just said because that is very, very important.
You
If
you can change the world
Yeah.
by being a dad.
Yeah, being a part of your kids' lives.
That's right.
So tell us more about your book. You have a book out, and I want to hear more about it.
It's on Amazon, and it is called Hidden in Plain Sight: How Men's Fears of Women Shape Their Intimate Relationships. And it's about what we've been talking about. It talks about the 7 fears that men have of women. It talks about how those fears show up. Maybe on another show, we'll talk about how those fears show up politically, which is a very interesting topic, and how they show up in the larger world. And then there are 3 whole chapters about. There's a chapter for men working on these fears themselves, a chapter for women to understand these fears in men, and a chapter about men and women working together as couples to understand these fears. There's no jargon in it at all. It's written in plain English. It's very accessible, very understandable. That's really important to me. It's an easy read.
Yeah. Well, good. I really want a lot of men to read this and get to know this, because I think this is information that you're giving is really fantastic and it's eye-opening, because we
Great.
as men, we don't really even sometimes realize it, you know.
And I'm happy to answer anyone's questions if they go to that Facebook page. If you just go to
Okay.
Facebook and search Men's Fears of Women, if you are reading the book and you have questions or you want to get together, whatever question or comment you have, I will personally respond to it.
Okay. And that's men fears of women?
Yes, Men's
Okay.
Fears of Women.
Okay. And it's going to be up on the screen. I'm going to put it up on the screen as well so they'll be able to find it. But we definitely want them, and that's a great resource for me to be able to find and get some help.
I'm really committed. You will, if you email me, I will answer you. I'm really committed. I don't care how many emails I get. I answer each and every one.
That's fantastic.
It's not a 2-word answer. I will sit down and take time and respond to you.
Okay. All right. That's fantastic. Well, Avrum, thank you so much. I know we
My
went
pleasure,
over our
Mike.
30 minutes, but that's okay. We knew at the beginning of the show.
It's true.
We knew this was going to happen, so that's okay.
That's right. We did.
Yeah. Well, I thank you so much for being on the show, and I thank you for bringing this information to us. And I really hope a lot of men take advantage of it. And I really hope women listen to exactly what you said, because it's important for them to understand how we deal with these issues. And, and I learn, because I know when I get into the argument, I regress. I go inside and I stay to myself. And I'm going to try to do better. My wife and I really don't have any arguments, but in case we do, I'm going to try to be a better man and do a better job at communicating.
I enjoyed talking with you very much. And I'll say I really appreciate the work that you are doing with men.
Well, thank you. And you too. That it's great to see somebody out there doing this and really breaking it down so that you can see it and understand it. And like you said, your book is in plain language so you can understand it.
Very much.
Good. Well, thank you so much. And I really look forward to having you back on the show again.
Sounds good, Mike. You take care.
So we can talk some more. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I thank Avrum for being on the show. That is really fantastic. And the information that he's providing is really good and knowledgeable, and something that we need to talk about and discuss. And having a support group where men can feel safe and open up and get this stuff off their chest is going to be huge. And it is huge, because we need it. We needed to be able to feel comfortable, to be able to get the things off our chest and be able to talk about it. So don't forget, email him, get in touch with him, and get your questions answered, because Avrum will definitely answer your question. But ladies and gentlemen, if you have not subscribed to the show, please subscribe to the show so that we can keep on bringing you good information that we had today. And click that notification bell so that way you can always be notified when we have a show. And if you're looking for resources, please go to the Father Show with MikeThompson.com. Click on resources, and there you will find resources that can help you. And anytime you can watch our show on our YouTube channel, you can find great information about whatever you may need. And if you need something in particular, please email me at thefathershow@gmail.com, and I will try my very best to get a subject matter that is going to work for you. All right. So thank you so much for joining us. I look forward to seeing you next week. So until then, God bless you. Have a great week. And I look forward to seeing you next week.